So we're here in the chapel at Bishop's House. I'm Bishop Mark and I'm here with Bishop Julie and with Bishop Sam. And we're having a brief conversation because the past cases review concerning safeguarding practice in the Diocese of Chester is about to be published. And obviously that's affected each of us deeply in our work, but also in our praying and our concern for the diocese. Bishop Julie, you've led on quite a lot of this.
I have, and I had a question for you actually right at the get-go, Mark, which is, you've been here longer, you've been here 2 years plus now in this diocese, and I just wondered what it was like coming into a diocese with what was then a poor safeguarding reputation and taking on your role, and I'd just like to hear a little bit about that.
Yes, well, it shapes indeed my ministry, my engagement, my feeling, my praying, my living here in the Diocese of Chester. Because to me, safeguarding is not something simply that we do because it's good practice, or even simply something that I would want to be good safeguarding in regard to you or somebody else because it's your human right, but actually because this is the way that God has created the universe. He loves us, He wants us to thrive. So it's at the very heart of the gospel for me. So to come into a diocese where there's deeply acknowledged utterly awful behaviour going right to the top of the diocese for years past has been hugely, hugely challenging. It's been personally really difficult, but nothing compared to those obviously who've been through that. And so coming in with a determination that what has been in the past will not be in the future, building a different culture, looking forward. And we've tried to embed that at every level. If you've joined us for prayers from the chapel at all, you'll notice we begin every service here by lighting 2 lanterns to pray for those who are victims and survivors of abuse, and also for those who care for them.
So we've had a chance as bishops to look at the past cases report, and also during our time to talk to the reviewers. And my first question is really, what did it feel like to read it? What did it feel like to understand some of the detail of what the failings had been within the diocese and what the challenges were? So Sam?
You're always aware as you read sentences, paragraphs, that words can't capture the depth of pain and of tragedy. And yet even so you capture a glimpse of something of the reality of the human suffering that's caused by personal decisions. And particularly in the report where others have colluded with the decisions of other people. And just struck by how not dealing adequately at the time with things that have gone wrong. It's much harder at every level to deal with things later on also. So the injury and the pain is compounded by and just sealing the length of time that we were dealing with as well was one of the things that struck me most, that this is going back 70 years in the case of this diocese.
I think that's what struck me most strongly when I was reading it, was the real pain of what I would say as 70 years, one way or another, and they were in very different ways, of what I see as poor safeguarding leadership. And that's what the reviewers were picking up on. And that creates a culture in a diocese, and it also creates a lot of people who were abused and then re-abused because things weren't dealt with correctly. And that's a huge swathe of time, those decades. And that's not a quick thing to turn around, which presents us with a big challenge going ahead.
I think that's right. And for me, that's why we need to restate, constantly renew our commitment to excellence in practice, but also in culture. So I don't know whether you'd say the same actually, but I've struggled to sit and read the report in one sitting because the magnitude of things you read, of real lives, they're not just words on the page. This is almost impossible, I think, to comprehend. But it's utterly vital that we do read and that we do take it not just to head but also to heart. Because the reality is, it's going to be 100 bits of good practice in a place where, if you like, I mean, I know good practice is needed everywhere, but where it wasn't really needed in the first place because nothing was going to go wrong. It's going to be 100 of those cases for every one case where you absolutely need the good practice because you stop something like this happening. So I think one of the things I want to say to those who are eavesdropping on this conversation because we're recording it is you need to do this because you need to do this because there can be no place in this diocese where shadows can exist, where people who are wanting to do evil can hide. And that's all of our responsibility, and it happens in daily commitment to good practice. And I think that's where I am when I come out of it, with this kind of determination that we will do whatever we can, however faffy it might be to apply for yet another DBS or apply for this. And we all have that sense of, I've got to do my training again. We have, because we hold responsibility for this culture, and we hold responsibility for this culture because everybody matters. That's where I come out of it, I think.
I think there's some real positives that came out of the process of past cases review in this diocese, but in other dioceses too. I mean, one of them was that the whole aim of it was literally turning up stones. It was to look in every cupboard, to look at files, to look for what had been missed in the first past cases review. And that's really important. And we've seen here, I can think of one case in particular that ended up going to court and resulted in a conviction because of past cases review. It was an existing known case, but we were challenged about our actions, quite rightly. And I can think of, parishes that were really good at sending in returns, raising questions, raising issues, and we will be going through all of those. And so we had a large number of issues raised. I think it was 253 questions to be addressed. That's not 253 cases. I think it worked out at about 136 within the actual past cases review remit. But every one of those 253 things is or has been addressed, and they vary from simple questions that are easy to answer to just correcting omissions in the recording of something where work's been done but it's not properly been put down, to really serious challenges about past practice. All of that has been incredibly useful. And hopefully what it will do is it will encourage more people to come forward, because they will have greater confidence that they will be responded to well and that they will be cared for as we respond. And hopefully through the publicity, which won't all be good, that we get as a diocese and that the national church gets, again, hopefully that will encourage more people to come forward. And discourage some people from hiding in plain sight in churches without their behaviour being properly managed.
And that process of transparency is vital, isn't it?
It is.
That we make ourselves accountable. And again, it seems to me that's good gospel principle, isn't it? That this is how we live.
That accountability and integrity and, like you say, transparency all seem key to our mission. And safeguarding is not outside our mission, it's absolutely central to our mission in the church. I guess one thing towards the end of this conversation from each of us, we usually look for something, either a one thing response or a one thing commitment.
Bishop Sam, have you?
He's thinking.
I'm thinking.
I can go first because that gives you time to think. You can tell we don't pre-plan this. I came up with an image about tapestry or embroidery when I was reading the report, and it was the idea that so often in our life in the church we create something that looks good at the front and there's a complete messy knot of stuff at the back. But there is actually an art in tapestry where you can create the back that is beautiful and fit for display as well. And I think that's how I would love safeguarding to be in the diocese, where we can honestly show our failings, show the difficulties that we have, show the challenges, but that we can also show how we have really worked to weave something better and something that, although knotty and difficult and painful, is fit to be seen. And that for me is really important. So I was sort of left with that sense of us not having things that are hidden and unsightly, but everything being more open, more transparent, and more beautiful, actually.
I think that's lovely.
I've not got a practical action as much as what I'm thinking about is how to build that confidence that you spoke about earlier, so that victims and survivors feel able to come forward. And I think you're absolutely right about how this report will help, not just in this diocese, but nationally as well. But being so aware of the courage that takes, and how triggering and re-traumatising that can be. And just reflecting on how do we create that place where people feel that they can speak, whether to us directly or about us, with confidence and trust. And that's so easy to damage, isn't it? And yet requires all of us to work hard to cultivate. And what will that look like? And how slow we need to be in defending or explaining, and how quick we need to be in terms of listening and being challenged, and open to continuing to develop our practice and our procedures and our training.
Thank you. And actually, sitting here, I've come up with a second, so can I break the rules and have two?
Yeah.
Because the one I came in with, I'll finish with. But actually, just sitting here in chapel, and the two lanterns that we light morning by morning as we pray, and in other services are right in front of me. And I'm taken back to the ways I've prayed about this over the last 2.5 years particularly. And I remember particularly sitting by the river with Barley, my dog, praying. I love praying outside, and it's a peaceful thing. And noticing how the river was made chaotic and turbulent by the things that stick up under the water that we can't see. And found myself deeply reflecting on and praying for a diocese where everything lines up in the same direction with safeguarding, where we're not putting stuff in the way. And in racism training, we often talk about the whataboutery. Yes, you might say this, but what about? And wanting us to be a culture where all of the small actions point towards good safeguarding practice, which means that the big flow of our work is unimpeded about being excellent at making this place as safe as we possibly can for people, at dealing well with those who are victims and survivors of abuse, and actually being a place where we're honouring each other, we're honouring Christ, we're honouring who we are called to be as human beings. So that's the thing that's just occurred to me today. But I'll tell you the other one that I came into the conversation thinking about, and that was about an ongoing commitment to listen and learn. So I think for me there can be a danger of thinking we've done all this work and now we know all the lessons, but that can never be the case, can it? And I do want to state, and I can see smiles and nods on both of your faces as I'm saying it, that we are committed to being a diocese, and I think the three of us are bishops, are committed to being bishops who will listen, who will take people and situations seriously, and who will continue to learn, and that's the culture which I think I see in the church around us, and for me is one of the great gifts, painful gifts, but important gifts of the past cases review.